Hello, today is January 24th, 2020, and the time is 12:26 p.m. In my previous video, I had mentioned about how my life was looking back at surviving abortion. I was primarily thinking about my childhood at the time, although knowing what I've went through in my adult life would also apply. And I'm going to be giving some examples, some random examples throughout my childhood, non-specific to any individual or anything. I'm just going to be vague about it, but just to give some insight as to some of the things that I've had to endure when I was a child. And I look back at all the emotional and physical abuse that I've had to endure when I was a child, and I may try to tie that in later in this video to a little bit of one part of my character as it may relate. But first, I would like to read a few comments to that video that have kind of inspired this video. I am 50 and life has been many struggles for me too since my memories as a toddler till now. I cannot explain why God just lets these things happen, and yes, sometimes it seems like life would have been better not to have been born. There is yet to come a day that a man would pass by a grave and think, if only I would have been in this place, it might have been better. So I'm going to go over some examples of things in my life that I've had to experience very briefly, and as I said, I'm going to be kind of vague about it for whatever reason, doesn't matter, and I'm just going to ramble and probably just pick and choose different examples for the video, just to keep time low on for this video. So I remember the first times I had oral sex performed on me when I was young, mostly by female babysitters. Never really thought much about it. It just seems like in life, when things happen, I just kind of roll with it and move on, type of thing. I don't get consumed by too much, if anything. Although the past 7 years I was pretty consumed by what I had to deal with and knowing where I would be in life by now. But anyway, I'm rambling. Another example would be in my childhood being beaten for things that I never did, or just being beaten. And I remember those times being sent to different people's homes to live at, and yeah, I remember that, and I always wondered as a kid, like, why, type of thing. But I also remember having my nose broken for the first time. I was just a little kid, and I wanted to go play with some other kids, and I got hit pretty hard in the face, and I remember my whole face just exploded and blood was everywhere. And soon after that, I had lost 25 cents. I had 25 cents, and I was more concerned about the 25 cents, I think, at the time than anything else. There was another time I was made to stay at another home, and I was picked up by my privates and dragged across the floor, and I suppose others thought it was funny, but whatever. I just remember it hurt, but I know I'd never dwelled on anything like that. Probably one of the biggest examples that really stand out for me in my childhood was having to kneel on rock salt for hours. And I remember it hurt because not only was it bumpy, but eventually the the rock salt would start to get into the skin and it would just burn. And that was the whole point of it, I was told. And I remember having to face the wall and just thinking to myself, I can't, pushing the pain aside and just dealing with it. And that stands out for me when I was a child. And just these few examples alone were all in my prepubescent years. This is what I had to endure. Afterwards, as I got older, there was just a plethora of different psychological, mental abuse that I had to endure, and eventually leading to being deliberately poisoned, and I discussed that in my previous video. But so yeah, there was a lot of things that I went through, and this just scratches the surface of or doesn't even scratch the surface really, now that I think about it, of examples. Now, everything in my life after I moved out on my own, I take ownership for. I did the best that I could with what extreme limited knowledge base that I had at the time, and tried to negotiate my way through life when I was 17. And I was pretty naive throughout my life, and I guess even having street smarts, I was naive, and I'm still naive to this day. And I guess a good example of that would be thinking that I would have a fair trial with the alleged charges and the whole proceedings and everything. So I am naive to a point. I take people on face value. So anyway, so that's that. The only thing I do not take ownership for after I moved out were the times when a particular person had gone out of their way to sabotage my life and my efforts and everything that I strive to do and accomplish. And even when I thought this individual was out of my life, it appears they weren't. And I don't take ownership for that. Regardless of all that, in my life, I've always pushed forward, moved forward, and did the best that I could to achieve something. It's more challenging when you have other people interfering with that. So looking back at my childhood and reflecting on how it impacted my life, primarily in my late teens, early 20s, was, I'm just trying to think of how to word it, finding myself being the one exploited, say, sexually and so forth. And I did mention in some of my older videos some examples of I used to sell myself to women, and I suppose there was maybe a little normalcy to that from my perspective, going back to when I was a child, and a lack of self-respect. But again, I don't put blame on my childhood history for that. You know, there comes a time where you have to take ownership, and what we see in today's society too much are these social justice snowflake types diverting everything to everyone else. And there's tons of people I've come across in my life who, however their life is at that moment, they say, well, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, so-and-so, and this is why I'm where I am today, and that is just making up excuses. However, there's a difference where somebody from history still meddles in someone's life, then there's the difference. To simply blame somebody or an event from history and linking it to how that person is at that time, I mean, where does it stop, right? But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. So I'm not trying to blow my own horn with what I'm about to say, and I'll get to that in a moment, but people throughout my life have always said how kind and smart I am and everything, and I really don't think that I'm kind or smart or anything. You know, I do the best that I can for others and so forth. But I just find it interesting throughout my life how I've been portrayed as the opposite. People who know me say one thing, but people who don't know me, for some reason, assume the complete opposite of who I am. And I've wondered why, but I mean, that would be just speculation. So throughout my life, my adult life, when I moved out on my own and stuff, I've always tried to do well for other people. However, you know, in my late teens, early 20s, it's all about ego. And, during those stages, or at least at that stage of my life, you know, there's some selfishness there, but I always try to do good for other people, and I always was sensitive as a descriptive to what other people are going through or experiencing or feeling and so forth. And throughout my life, I evolved with my character and becoming a better and better person, as we all should be. Most people not, but I know for myself, I've learned a lot. I just mentioned, for example, about your late teens, early 20s. It's all about ego. You have this, and you're invincible, and you know, life is forever away, you know, type of thing. But as you get older, you see more life, you have more life experiences and so forth. And through this, through my own personal and professional experiences in life, and I'm not going to get into the woo-woo stuff, you just learn more. Your knowledge base increases. Whereas when in youth, you don't have that. And one of the problems we see today, there's a lot of focus on the youth being our future. But what is missed is the youth is our future, but not while in their youth. And being people in their youth, having that ego, we get into this whole entitlement thing, and that's going to be for a different video. What I find interesting, kind of tying it in loosely to what I've been dealing with for the past 7 years here, is any time in my life that I did go to the police or even government for help, it was always met with resistance. But yet, just any kind of nonsense against me, and oh yeah, it was just they were all over it and went with it, which is I just don't get why. One example that stands out in my past was in my late teens, when I was already living on my own, being in a hospital and being sexually assaulted by 5 to 6 female nurses while I was there. And I did a video on this and mentioned it in a few other older videos, so feel free to look that up. But I remember over the span of, I think it was like 9 years, I was trying to pursue it off and on, had different lawyers and people filing stuff and everything. And I mentioned in one of my videos how those sexual assault complaints were showing up on the police computer databases, but not clear that I was the complainant, and whoever read it apparently assumed that I was the one being accused because I am male. And I've come to learn, because I am male, through my expanded knowledge base. If you would have asked me this, say 20, 30 years ago, I would have never made that connection. But with the whole feminist narrative of today, that's why people read that and it's like automatically assume, oh, and over a span of 9 years of filing these complaints off and on with different lawyers and everything, it's no wonder why police, if they see that, they automatically assume, oh yeah, this guy is a piece of crap, so who cares, right? So anyway, I talk about that in other videos. And what really bothers me a lot about this 7-year event that I had just gone through unsuccessfully is the types of accusations that they were coming up with. And no one, and this is with no one, ever speaking to me one time, to date, I would say. And they were talking about sexual exploitation, and at one point there was some assumption that I was going to exploit the female to making porn. I don't make porn. And I guess this is based on them finding an audio recorder and the pen recorder, and not. I was audio video recording my vindication. That's why I was with her, but they just automatically jumped to these assumptions, I guess. And I could never understand how these people, this human garbage, and I call them human garbage, because they make uninformed conclusions. They think they're more than human. And most of all, because these cowards cannot take ownership of their own mistakes. But these people profile me as someone who mimics a pedophile grooming a child. Then there's prostitution, and then this porn thing, because I was video and audio recording my meetings with the female and all this stuff. And this is all despite there being no sex. And this is how their minds work. Talk about cognitive dissonance. And these are the type of people that society looks up to. And what really got me over the years, having to deal with all these assumptions and accusations and everything, is these are the things that I was trying to save the woman that I married from. And I talk about this in other videos. And I've lived with not being able to help her back in 1999 and the 10 years that I gave myself that followed. And I live with that. And to be accused of all this horrendous stuff, which is not even remotely close to my character, and none of these people care that they destroyed my life. But I have to move on, I guess. And the problem now is, or the unfairness is, I have to carry everything that they did wrong. I have to carry this now for the rest of my life and try to pick up the pieces of my life. I suppose the point of this video, my life, would be my having a lifetime of injustice and never once having an opportunity to have justice. That's what I have to carry. Now, some of the comments people have made privately or have posted, people say, how could God, the Most High, allow these kind of things happen to me and others? And I've never once said I had it worse or better than anyone. I'm just simply sharing my story. And what I've told some people is this. Yes, the Most High owns everything. He created everything. He owns everything. And I'm not going to get into any discussion with atheists or anybody else about about God or anything. But so he owns everything. However, his enemy thought he could do better. And this happened a long time ago, long before any of us. We're talking about in the beginning type of scenario. So the Most High said, okay, go ahead, see if you can do better. Now, people might say, or people have actually said, well, that's not fair to us then. How much does the Most High really love us or care about us? Well, what people fail to realize is, yes, the Most High said to the enemy, go ahead. But it was humans that had the choice of who rules over them, the Most High or his enemy. And just look at the world today. It tells you what choice was made. So this is why things are the way they are, and the world is as it's supposed to be. And if you don't like it, well, don't blame the Most High. My next video, I hope to get back into discussion about society overall, nothing specific. And I want to focus on respect, or what we see in society today is the lack of respect. So that's what I'm planning on for my next video. So hopefully you stick around, and when that one comes up, watch that one as well. So thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.